This video was made possible by Good Better Best Tuition Services. Please subscribe to this channel for the latest videos. Today we are going to be discussing our second lesson on equations. Let's quickly go over the rules governing equations. So the first rule of equations is what you do to the left-hand side, you must do to the right-hand side. In other words, if I add 6 to the left-hand side, I must also add 6 to the right-hand side. Second rule is that you want to simplify the left-hand side and the right-hand side until you have one term on the left and of the equal to sign and one term on the right-hand side. Third rule is you always want to separate the variable from the constant. So whether your x is on the left-hand side and your constant is on the right-hand side, or your variables on the right-hand side and your constant is on the left-hand side, is absolutely fine as long as they are separated by an equal to sign. And then when you have simplified and you've got one term on the left and one term on the right, you need to multiply or divide to solve for your variable. When we do an example, I'll show you what I mean. Let's look at example 1. We have x plus 7 is equal to 13. So our aim here is to solve for x. And how do we solve for x? We need to get x alone. And how are we going to get x alone? By getting rid of the 7. How do we get rid of the 7? Let me show you. To get rid of the 7, we need to look at a concept called additive inverse. Now the additive or inverse is that which makes an expression equal to 0. So plus 7, what makes plus 7 equal to 0? Minus 7. So plus 7 minus 7 is 0. Likewise, minus 2 plus 2 is 0. And 3x minus 3x is also equal to 0. So in order to get the x alone on the left-hand side, we need to subtract 7 to get rid of the positive 7. But you remember what the rule is? What you do to the left-hand side, you must do to the right-hand side. So if I'm going to subtract 7 on the left-hand side, I must also subtract 7 on the right-hand side. So x plus 7 minus 7 will leave me with x on the left hand side, and 13 minus 7 will give me 6. So that leaves us with x is equal to 6. Let's look at example 2. 2x plus 3 is equal to 7. So as we mentioned in our laws before, or our rules, what we want to do is isolate the x. So we want the x's on the one side and we want our constants on the other side. So we need to get rid of the 3 on the left hand side to get 2x alone. How are we going to get rid of the 3? We are going to get rid of the 3 by finding the additive inverse. The additive inverse of positive 3 is negative 3, but the rule comes into play. What I do on the left hand side, I must do on the right hand side. So if I subtract 3 on the left hand side, I must subtract on the right hand side as well. That leaves me with 2x is equal to 4. Now in order to solve for x, we need to divide by the number in front of the x, which in this case is 2. But again, what we do on the left hand side, we must do on the right hand side. 2x divided by 2 will leave me with x on the left hand side, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I know that the concept of an additive inverse might be a little bit confusing to some of you. So what I want to do is go back to the method that I've seen some of you use and use that method and explain equations to you. I'm going to be using the same example though because I want to show you something. We spoke earlier about grouping like terms together. In other words, we want our variables together on one side and numbers on the other side. And so what we do is we take our plus 3 and what I've heard you say is, it goes over the equal to sign to the other side, and when we take it over, it changes sign. In other words, that plus 3 becomes a minus 3. So we have 2x is equal to 7 minus 3. I'm sure that this looks more familiar to some of you than this additive inverse example, but I want to show you something. This minus 3 comes from that minus 3, and because we subtracted on the left hand side, we also had to subtract on the right hand side. Look at the right hand side. That expression is the same as that expression. What's happening in this method though is that we are not showing the minus 3. It's assumed that you know that we took the additive inverse of plus 3, it was minus 3, and we subtracted it on both sides. That automatically cancels out because we said that plus 3 minus 3 is 0. But what we do in this method is we don't show those calculations. All we do is take the plus 3 over and say it's 7 minus 3. And then your answer will be exactly the same. Let's look at example 3. And now we are going to continue with method 2 because it seems that that is the method that most of you are using. So as we've said before, we want to group like terms together. So we want the 3x with a 2x, and we want the 7 with a negative 15. However, anything that goes over the equal to sign or under the equal to sign in this case will change sign because of the additive inverse concept which we've spoken about on the previous page. So the 3x will change to a negative 3x, and the positive 7 will change to a negative 7 on the right hand side. That gives me negative x on the left hand side and negative 22 on the right hand side. So we know we need to solve for x. What we have at the moment though is negative x, so we need to divide by the number in front of the x. Do you know what the number is in front of the x? It's minus 1, and that's what we need to divide by on both sides. And that will give me x is equal to 22. Let's do one more example. In example 4, we have minus x minus 6 is equal to 2x minus 18. Again, we want to group our like terms so that we know the 2 will go over to the left hand side to group with a negative x, and as it goes over it will change sign. The negative 6 will go over to negative 18, and as it goes over it will change sign to become positive. Minus x minus 2x is minus 3x, and minus 18 plus 6 is minus 12. So what do we need to do now? We need to divide by the number in front of the x. In this case it's negative 3, but what we do to the left we must also do to the right. That leaves us with x is equal to 4. Thank you for watching with us, and then if you need tuition in maths, English, Afrikaans, physics or accounting, grades 1 to 12, we are based in Lotus River, Cape Town, and we can help. Please feel free to contact me on the number on the screen for more information.